teaching me I couldn't find enlightenment. And that's the only reason I wanted to study philosophy. So I walked to Stonehenge and sat and renounced that pseudo-academic path to take up the real pursuit of philosophy. And I can only say I received some pretty powerful downloads from the Druid turners in and around here at Wiltshire and Stonehenge. And then later I went back into academia to kind of like confirm, did what I know, was that measurable up against? And of course then you read Hegel and you read Plato and you read the great sages of the academic philosophical canon, and you know, yes, they saw this too. I mean, Hegel came from Stuttgart, which was an ancient Druid stronghold on the Rhine. And he thought in threes. His whole logic system is based on, thesis, antithesis, synthesis. The Druids thought always in threes. That's why the old triads of Britain, the oldest Welsh poetry, are called the triads. So, it doesn't take a genius to work out by inference that Hegel was getting downloads in his place and time from the most ancient sources of things. Because three is the symbol of reconciliation and peace. That's why it's in the Trinity. The Christians, Hilary of Poitiers, the kind of theologian who really got the Trinity sorted, he was from the Celtic area. Poitiers is a Celtic town. And the Trinity has also that function of synthesis, healing, peace, and reconciliation. And it's the power of the Holy Spirit that does that. So whenever two opposing forces, father and son, they're all fighting away, we see that all the time, mother and daughter. The Holy Spirit reconciles and heals. That's the secret meaning of the Trinity, which Rudolf Steiner talked about, by the way. He understood this in anthroposophical Christianity. And he had a great respect for the Druids, did old Steiner. He understood them. But in the real world, we have to deal with different religions, right? So we have to honour and respect and love and study them and find that core common universal truth, that dharma within them all. And then we have to learn to see it, which is the vid. The second part of the name Druid, vid, is to know or see. And it's the same root as the word idea in Greek. An idea is a seeing that you have, which creates a portal up to the world of eternity, as Plato said. The ideas live in a sort of etheric realm between this physical world and the divine world of the gods. They're the portals whereby you see the immortal ideas. And they're things we know with, ideas. We need things like truth, justice. These are ideas that they're divine, ultimately. And if we tune into them and live according to them, then that's enlightenment. That's enlightenment, Plato style. And yes, and the Druids knew this. So as we proceed to the study of other religions, we find these divine ideas embedded in them all. Read any seriously profound Hindu, Buddhist, Celtic, or ancient scripture, they're all there. And that's what I've had great fun doing the last 20 years. I've been doing commentaries on as many scriptures as I've got time to do in this life. It's a short visit here. But I've just finished a 10-year commentary on the Quran as a scholar of comparative religion who loves Arabic culture, and I love Islam because it's amazing. And I've taught at the Muslim College in London. I've sat at the feet of Sufis and met from Islamic teachers. And, they opened my eyes to understand the Quran as a peace text. The Quran could have been written by a peace druid. It's so profoundly beautiful in its teachings. And Muhammad was obviously getting a download from this divine consciousness or the divine intelligence that everyone else gets it from. Right? He was a fascinating man. He was a descendant of the Quraysh tribe, which were descendants of Abraham and Hagar, the consort of Abraham, who was Egyptian, who he'd met in Egypt, who was a princess. And so, and she raised Ishmael, their son, in Mecca, and the Quraysh, honoured this. That's where the Kaaba came from. And Muhammad grew up with this. This was his storyline, his narrative. And so he said, I I don't think people are living up to the ancient wisdom very much. It's time to get a renewed download. And he learned through 15 years of travelling as a merchant from Mecca with his wife, partner, wisdom muse, Khadija. He was running the caravans out of Mecca and going to all these amazing places. Damascus, he was talking to saints from all faiths, rabbis, Christian monks. He went down to the Yemen, but he also went to Hira, which is on the frontiers of Iraq, which was a Lakhmid kingdom of Arab Christians. And they were having a form of Christianity like Nestorian Christians. And there were also Manichaeans there, and Zoroastrians. I can see Muhammad in the cafes of Hira listening to these conversations and like saying, well, okay, so where's the latest update? What's God saying now? The Manichaeans were saying, yeah, it was Mani, he came 200 AD. And he tried to synthesize all the religions, and he travelled all over like a kind of druid. But, not everybody accepted it, and he was cruelly martyred. And so Muhammad is thinking away, you can see, like, we need to do God's work here and get this sorted. And eventually, after 15 years of these travels, he then retires to a cave. He took up to retreats in a mountain outside Mecca called Hira, and he started these downloads, which are these sacred texts that came through his supernatural consciousness, prophetic awareness, and he was able to speak them, and his students would write them down. And that's what the Quran is. And what I've done in my commentary on the Quran, which is the first time it's ever been attempted by a scholar of any kind, let alone Western or whichever kind of Islam, is to try and trace the roots of the download from the divine consciousness down into the individuated consciousness of Muhammad's prophetic intelligence, down into the language of Arabic, and then into the translation of English. It's like watching a raindrop falling in slow motion, coming from the highest clouds down, and then taking form, or maybe a snowflake would be better, and then describing that journey. So I've done that with every single verse of the Quran. I've tried to trace it back to source, the transpersonal source, and then explain why it comes down. Because when the Muslims say that the Quran is holy and divine, it comes from God, I've taken that literally and tried to explain how. And the trouble is that, of course, when it comes down, it's misinterpreted, it's misunderstood, it's decontextualized. What I've done with my commentary on the Quran is put it back in chronological sequence. The book we have, which was done by a committee after Muhammad was dead, he wouldn't have agreed that ordering. He would have said, do it chronologically, because I got the first download here, and then the next, and the next. To understand the whole sequence, you have to see it in the chronological sequence, which is what I've done. I've redone it in chronological sequence. Nobody's done this before. And also, the only person that has done it is Ali, who was the wisest of all Muhammad's disciples, and who introduced the Gnostic wisdom, Shiism, through the Imamate, and that's still going on in Persia. He had a chronological version of the Quran, because he was there when most of these downloads came. But he was then martyred, he was killed. This is one of the problems that we have to address, which is what I call Sophiophobia. So, okay, wisdom is universal, it's there in all traditions, it's there waiting for us to find it. But people are too obsessed with material power, wealth, sex, all the trappings of fame, blah, blah, that they're not aware of it even. The school system has become like just a system for ranking people in the social class so that they can go to Eton and join the Tory party and become the chief robber barons of the country, or the Sunnah barons, and then the ordinary people just drop out, become a car mechanic, have a normal horizontal life. Well, that's not what education is about. True education is what I'm talking about. It's accessing the divine plan, the divine wisdom, and that's what the Druids taught. Here in Avebury, time travel back 4,000 years, there would have been a little discussion group like this talking this stuff, and they exactly knew what I'm saying here. That's what's so magical and beautiful. And if you tune into the terms, you can see that. So So, confronted with Islam, yes, we should absolutely welcome it as in its wisest form, and help our Muslim brothers and sisters to see what I was just saying about the spiritual source of it. I had a wonderful experience when I went to Palestine and Israel, setting up the Truth and Reconciliation Commission for the Middle East. I met a Palestinian Arab, very strong, wonderful guy, near Haifa, who has a mosque, and he's a traditional Sufi Muslim. And he was very suspicious of meeting me at first. I was taken by a friend of mine, an Israeli, for a peace discussion. And she probably didn't explain it very well over the phone. He wouldn't talk to me. The first hour that I arrived in his mosque, they gave, eventually after 20 minutes, me waiting outside, they said, well, come in and have some tea. But he wouldn't actually come and meet me for about an hour, because finally he came and gave a rant in which he ranted against the West, he ranted against Britain, he ranted against the CIA, he ranted against Israel, he ranted against Zionism. He ranted. And then he looked at me and he said, and you work for the CIA, right? He ran around. So I was the demon, I was the enemy for him. Anyway, he did his ranting for half an hour. And then I said, okay, can I get a word in? Finally he stopped, and we had some mint tea together. And then I did my little response. I said, no, I'm not here on any government business. I don't work for the intelligence services. I'm not, I'm not part of that whole scene. In fact, I utterly oppose it. I'm the peace druid of Britain. And I could see his eyes going sort of opening wide. I said, no, and we're the people that built Stonehenge and Avebury. We were there long before even Abraham was around, or any kind of Muslim, Christian, Jewish fights going on. We were there in the ancient times. We're from the most ancient times. And his eyes opened like mine. He reached out to me, smiling, grasped my hand and said, welcome home, brother. We've been waiting. Well, thank you for coming. And his attitude totally changed the minute he heard the word Druid. He I don't know how, but he knew what I was talking about at an intuitive, deep level. And then we had a really amazing deep chat for a couple of hours, which was all filmed. And we've got it for the archive of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of the Middle East. And my approach to peacemaking in the Middle East is we have to go back to that ancientness. We have to get our friends in the Middle East, whatever their outer religion, clothing is, to recognise their primal ancientness. Because it's a holy land, all of it's a holy land, whether it's Iraq or Afghanistan or Pakistan or Palestine or Armenia or Israel or whatever, it's all holy lands, plural. And we should be helping them to live in peace, not bombing them. So I've just had a flight in on my trip here from France. I met someone from the Foreign Office who was saying, well, David Lammy ought to meet you because that's what he wants too, the new Foreign Secretary. We need peace, this friend was saying. Please come to the Foreign Office and tell us how to do it, because we don't understand. I'm going to take them up on that offer because as a peace druid, I have a duty to help my government actually find peace in the Middle East, because it's a mess. 40,000 people killed in Gaza, totally needlessly. We could have sorted this non-violently with peace, diplomacy and negotiation. That's the Druid way, right? And the Christian way, actually. And the same to Hinduism and to Judaism. Reread the Bible, find the peace message in it, find the message of truth and righteousness, find the message of non-violence. It's in there. And then emphasize that. And let the other stuff, the sort of nationalist bravado rhetoric of killing the other, fall away, because that was all later. That was just macho scribes, being paid by a king to tell the king's story. That's not the Druid truth. The Druid truth is ancient wisdom, as old as water and as ancient as sunlight. Okay, so, and with Buddhism too, I'm a great lover of Buddhism. I've studied the Buddhist path for many years. I practiced Tantric Buddhism, Vajrayana. I took a bodhisattva vow as a 19-year-old after my trip to Stonehenge, studied with Buddhist lamas and stuff. I want everybody to have enlightenment. but I love it so much, I don't think they have to become Buddhist to get it. You can have Buddhist enlightenment, but diffused into the traditions, because each path is a dharmic path. So that's what I mean by meta Mahayana. Mahayana talks about a great vehicle. We're all working for enlightenment. I'm saying let's go for the greatest vehicle, which is everyone's path is a valid path. So stay a Druid, stay a Buddhist, stay a Wiccan, stay a Rune, a Sattri, stay a New Age, whatever, stay an American Indian, and find enlightenment within that path. Hence the search for enlightenments, plural. Let's compare and contrast and find the commonality of them all. That to me is the essence of true Buddhism, which is, I follow what I call Maitreya Buddhism, not Gautama Buddhism, which is the old school. Thou shalt not, follow this strict path. I'm saying let's follow the Maitreya Buddhism of divine love and friendship and build a world together that's fit for humans when we're all enlightened in our own separate ways. We'll never be exactly the same, and that's what's so beautiful. Who wants to be the same? We all are different, but we have a sameness at its core, and that's what the word samadhi means. It comes from the same root samadhi as sameness and doing, so it's about doing sameness together. Zoroastrianism also, Baha'ism, beautiful offshoot of Shi'ism. There's wisdom here that we should all benefit from, and I would love 7 hours of RE teaching a week in schools instead of so much economics and business and maths endlessly, which isn't really much use when you're older. Whereas ethics is absolutely of value. And meaning and purpose and the meaning of life. That's what we should be teaching. So yes, Druids should work with other faiths and work for interfaith harmony and peace. I don't know if there is an interfaith group here in Avebury or in Wiltshire. I've worked at a high interfaith level with the world's largest interfaith group. It's called Religions for Peace. It's got an office in New York near the UN, and it's got 53 nations that are members and have chapters. There's one in the UK and Ireland, and I was Secretary General here for Ireland and Britain for 10 years. Took me to interfaith conferences in Rome, where Pope John Paul II presided, and I met cardinals and imams and rabbis from all over the planet, American Indian shamans and Zoroastrians and Shinto priests. And what's not to love about this? We should be having more of this. The Pope said, please come back, this is such a wonderful conference, come back any time, use the Vatican. So I have actually written sometimes and said, when horrible wars are going on, I've written to the then Pope saying, I want to come and do a mediation between whatever, Iraq and America. I think John Paul was quite visionary. He would have probably written back, Thomas, come immediately, But at the moment you have to go through all the bureaucracy and you meet the civil servant types that don't have the spirit. And this is what's the trouble with religions. It becomes ossified. And they become power holders on their own level, instead of power holders on behalf of the community of saints, which is what they should be, and therefore empowering all the streams and currents of wisdom on the planet. So my friends are doing water blessings here, but what I'd like to do is wisdom blessings, wisdom current blessings. So we honour and celebrate all these. They're like streams of energy, of gnosis. What about global warming and ecological issues? So water blessing and working with the natural elements is very important. The planet is suffering because we humans have been misbehaving and we've been pumping out wrong kind of gases and toxic chemicals and so on. So it's a moral duty of us to clean up the environment and to work to stop the negative impact of climate change. It's not beyond our capacity. We can invent new forms of energy. We can get scientists, instead of working on militarism, most scientists on the planet get their money from inventing weapons and war. We have to demilitarize science, and we have to get it working on peace and ecological and green issues, and stopping poverty and the negative impact on the climate of war and militarism. So in the Lex Innocentium, published in Ireland, that's one of the streams that we're focusing on, is we have to stop war for the sake of the environment, because that's an innocent. When trees get ravaged or burned or cut down, or whole forests get napalmed in war, God forbid in nuclear war they get devastated. That's a crime against nature, against ecology, against Gaia, who is an innocent in all this. So yes, the greening of science and knowledge is very important. And there's an eco-philosophy, I've been working with people about this behind the scenes. In New York, they've just published, the UN, bless them, the fruit of the Summit for the Future, an event that took place in the UN in New York, where I've spoken at the UN headquarters a couple of times about universities and peace. And they've issued a pact for the future. So we live here because of the future, and we have to be mindful of the generations to come, and therefore act and sort out this world, bring peace for the benefit of the future, which actually is probably going to be us in future incarnations. It just is common sense. We don't want to foul our own nest, because we're going to have to keep coming back again and again till this planet is restored to its pristine beauty. That's the Druid path. We don't leave a planet when it's been desecrated. We help tidy up. We stay behind at the after party. And that's the Bodhisattva path. You don't just reach enlightenment, float off to some new age bubble of spaceship harmony. No, you tidy up the mess. And so that's it's not for everybody. Some people don't like hard work. But if you want to be a Druid or a Christian or a Bodhisattva, you have to help sort out the mess that other people who've been had less fortune to understand these things. These are very profound truths I'm sharing here. Many people don't have the chance to study this stuff. But we who have therefore a duty and responsibility to act for their sakes too. And what about feminism? Is that important? Well, the Druids it was a women, male-friendly, co-spiritual path. So the women of the Druid community in Ireland and the Celtic world in Britain are equally as vitally important as the men's, because we have complementary, slightly different perspectives, which go together really well. That's why, in a sense, we were created in that complementary way. All men have a feminine way of looking at things, and all women have a masculine way. So we have that within ourselves, as Jung said. But it's also nice to have it as difference, because as France says, vive la différence. It's the otherness that allows love to flourish between the flash of recognition. So yes, men and women should cooperate for this planetary salvation, and honour each other's missions, which are slightly different. And there's a question comes up in sometimes when I'm teaching is ecological issues, are they more important than peace issues, or vice versa? Which should I do first? I say it's a wrong question, because it's the same issue. The greatest single destroyer of the environment is war and militarism. The greatest pumper out of gases is the entire planetary military machine. Air Force, Navy, submarines, tanks, that are roaming around the planet, using up our resources. They are the single best thing we can do to help the environment is to demilitarize the planet and to demilitarize science. And friends of mine are working on clocking the universities, how much funding they get from the MOD. It's vast, huge percentage. Same in America. The military is trying to control and take over academia and our university system. And it gives loads of money if you research new kinds of weapons, or even things like how to torture people more effectively. It's shocking what they're doing. And with their arms trades and their trade fairs where they show off new torture equipment. This has all got to be demilitarized. And that means academia has to stand up and say in the Platonic way, no, we stand for the idealism of the eternal mind. We stand for the eternal truth of the divine ideas, and we are not going to be tolerating this militarism anymore. Academia is a sacred thing, dedicated to the 9 muses, who were the goddesses of Greece. And just as in the Celtic world, we work for the divine feminine, the goddess, Ceridwen. All Druids are disciples of Ceridwen, effectively, through Taliesin. And so yes, demilitarizing science and working for peace is working for Gaia, working for the environment. It's not an either or. And what about, politics? Well, I think I've said enough that you get my view on this, which is the political sphere has to be suffused under the cosmic law now. The divine morality has to reoccur. And this is what the great philosophers have said. This is what Kant said, it's what Montesquieu said, it's what Hegel said, it's what T.H. Green, a great Oxford philosopher, said, as a British Hegelian Christian. It's what my tutors, when I studied political philosophy at the University of London, people like John Plamenats. This is the tradition where we insist that politics stands for truth, righteousness, love and peace instead of violence and terror. And that's, each generation has to rediscover that bit of truth. Otherwise, we lose this planet, effectively. And in the Irish problems I was fortunate to help play a small role in the healing of the British-Irish conflict when we got the Good Friday Agreement. I'd been to Ireland to meet some Druids. We had ceremonies at Tara. From the Council of British Druid Orders, we went to the Irish Druids. And we made peace at a metaphysical level. And later that year, the Good Friday Agreement was signed. And the Archdruid of Ireland wrote to me and said, "We did it, Thomas." It was us doing that Druid peacemaking that enabled the politicians to do their political peacemaking. That's why I'm so against Brexit, because it threatened that. And I want to re-establish Europe as a zone for peace, which is what it should be. And I don't agree with the militarization of Europe. I want to end the Ukraine-Russia war through non-violence and through a peace treaty for everyone. And it's possible through negotiations and discussions. The logic of either or is the logic of war. Either you do this or you do that. No, we work for the logic of synthesis, which was Hegel's point, and we find a way that everyone can go away happy, both and, which was Nagarjuna's point, the great Buddhist logician. Anyway, I've written a book called The Logic of Peace, which I haven't published yet, where I've explained how logic needs to reform in the light of our urgent need for demilitarization of the planet. And I'm trying to remind people of what logic is for, which is for creating an intelligent, rational, and ordered and peaceful world, which is reflecting the true divine light. And it's possible that we can do that. So just to finish, I'm optimistic. I think we can get Europe back on track as a peace project. If I get to talk to the Foreign Secretary, I'm going to say, fine, sign a defence pact with Europe, which is what they were saying they'll do, but put in there that you want to see Europe create a European Union mediation service. And Britain would be part of that, even though we're not in the EU. We would help with our expertise and our soft power as mediators. So that the Ukraine-Russia war, we should have mediated that. The Druid path is the way of mediation, finding the middle way. And there was no need for this madness, and there still isn't. So I'd like to see Britain working with our European colleagues, France, Germany, all the rest of it, as a peace force for good in the world, which is what we were supposed to be. And that was the original idea behind the European Union. And we need to get back to that and reawaken that. So that would be the Druid path. And just to say that I'm based in France, which is Gaul, which is full of Druid remains, sacred sites, teeming with it. And I put them all in my Encyclopedia of Druid Studies, which I published a couple of years ago, the first ever time anyone's done that. There's the flyer about the Encyclopedia of Druid Studies, which is, as a labour of love, 1,000 pages, 3 volumes, and I put in everything I've been talking about, plus 100,000 more things. So that's available, And I'd love to do even another edition of 4 volumes, or somebody else can do it for me. I've also published recently this book, Magical, peacemaking, because there's two sectors or spheres of knowledge I'm very interested in. One is peace studies, conflict studies. I run the Institute of Peace Studies and so on academically. And then there's magic, like esoteric knowledge, what I've been talking about, enlightenment. And the word druid and the word magician are the same word. A druid is a magician, and a magus in the best sense of the word. So when Christ was a little baby, 3 magi came to see him. Well, in the Gaelic translation of the Bible, it's 3 druids come to see baby Jesus, because that's the Gaelic word for the magi, right? So as a peace druid of Britain, I thought, shouldn't one try and put together magic with peace and create a new thing called peace magic? It doesn't exist, of course. We have sex magic, thousands of books on that. We have how to get rich and famous using magic type books, etc., etc. We don't have peace magic. So I thought we ought to have it. So I wrote the handbook. This is a course on how to be a peace magician. And it's written, you don't have to be a druid in the technical sense. You can be anything. Magic is a universal path. And it's just, I had such fun writing it. It's got exercises, meditations. It's got things to do, what not to do, what to avoid. It's got chapters on goodwill and peace magic. We just did the meditation on that. Intention and peace magic. The 3rd lesson, which is very important. So your motivation has to be pure if you're trying to master the magical path. Motivation is key. And we were just talking last night about Dr. John Dee, one of my heroes. I used to be a lot opposite to him. He was a magus. He's called the magus of Britain. He was the peace magician of his day. And it said, John Aubrey, in his vignette about John Dee's life, he interviewed people that had known John Dee. John Aubrey was a man from Wiltshire here. And he wrote about John Dee based on what he was told. And one of the people he interviewed, who'd been John Dee's housekeeper at one point, said he was a mighty peaceful man. A mighty peaceful man. So anyone disputing in the area, neighbourhood, friends, relatives, they'd go to him to sort it out. I just thought that was such a beautiful thing to say to someone. A mighty peaceful man. Read John Aubrey on Dee. But Dee was a peace magician, And the fact that he wasn't honoured in his time, he was given like the rectorship at Upton on Severn. Great, And he was sent off to run a college in Manchester. I mean, he was given some accolades, but true peace magicians don't need that. We do our work in secret, out of the eye of the masses, because... Anyway, and there's a whole chapter on Christianity and peace magic. And the tarot. I've done another thing, the tarot of the gods for the first time, which I think is very important. We should have the tarot of the male gods to balance the female goddesses, because we need each other to do proper peace magic. So anyway, that's a great book. I recommend people should get that. If you've enjoyed this lecture, you can do a lesson a week for a whole year, and I'd be happy to correspond. Okay, I think I'm coming up to the end of what I wanted to say here. I just want to honour this sacred place. We'll finish with a silence, and then any questions or discussion that people have got. But it's a pleasure to be here. And thank you to all the people that made this possible here, who've helped come to this event or bring it about, and to the people of Avebury who keep this sacred place going.